Dvorak, D-V-O-R-A-K, streaming live at Facebook, Periscope.com right now. Anyway, she is the award-winning National Security Border Security Investigative Reporter for TV, radio, and print media. And she is the Senior Foreign Policy Advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy. TV correspondent, CW6 News in San Diego, as well as One America News Network. Website is The Maybe Report. Kimberly, how are you?
I'm fine. How about yourself, Chuck?
Pretty good, pretty good. You know, a lot of things breaking here. I got to tell you, we're going to get to the testimony that's been going on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Of course.
I think they're trying to round it out to, like, let's see if we can go 2.5 years. All about Mueller.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something, listener. One of the most serious things right now on the plate, and Kimberly and I'll discuss it in a few moments here, and perhaps maybe towards the end of the show. But anyway, Iran has announced earlier this week, that they apprehended 17 U.S. spies and are now claiming they will execute all unless the U.S. government agrees to ease regional tensions. Boy, tensions, that is sort of like everything from A to Z, when you're talking about, I need to go to the chiropractor or something like that.
Yeah, well,
tension is a big word.
Yeah, this is kind of a tricky situation because presumably the majority of the people that they nabbed were most likely maybe assisting U.S. Officials at the State Department, let's say, or intel community, but they are not actually American citizens because, as we know, when governments, are toppled, everybody has to regroup. You get people who have left the country and then they're away for a long period of time. In this case, since 1979, there's really been limited, transit back and forth. So now you have people probably going back into the country, inserting themselves, working up the ladder, and because they perhaps live in the United States or perhaps, they are supported by the United States, Iran feels it can go out and say that they found 17 spies and they're going to execute them all. So and we don't know who these people are because, there's no names really with them. So, they could be Israelis, they could be Brits. We just don't know at this point. But it's important to highlight this fact that once tensions escalate in that region, like they're currently doing under NSA John Bolton, and he's dropping the ball all over the show there. But the president's right in sending Rand Paul and saying, look, what can it hurt? Diplomacy, let's try to do this diplomacy thing. And I think this is where you're seeing some of the pressure ratcheted up, I think, on current administration officials that don't agree with the president.
Yeah, and two things, all right, and kind of different, well, a bit different again. Number one, when you're talking about these spies, they could also be Iranian citizens.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly, and this is where the U.S. they could be giving information to the U.S. and so the Iranian leadership is thinking, well, we can just say U.S. spies, and that's going to make if that actually happens and they execute 17 people, then just imagine the headlines for President Trump. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, allows 17 of the U.S. spies to be executed in Iran. That's the headline. That's not the truth, but that's the headline. That's what we're dealing with.
I don't have the source of my story for some reason, but anyway, the headline was, again, Senator Paul, a chief peace with Iran. And in their second paragraph, they say, complicating these ongoing tensions with Iran is the current National Security Advisor John Bolton's efforts to derail President Trump's view on foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of wonder, why is the National Security Advisor trying to derail Trump? Trump doesn't mess around getting rid of people.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. And we're in Washington, D.C. We're hopeful that we'll see that change sometime soon. You never know. The president, does, at the flip of a switch. There have been people that said that Bolton, he plays good cop, bad cop with Bolton, and that's why he likes the role. But it's evident with people inside the White House that Bolton is a troublemaker. Nobody wants to listen to him. He doesn't talk to the Pentagon any longer. much. I mean, they used to have open lines of communication directly with the Pentagon. They don't have that under Bolton anymore. So,
closed down.
yeah, shut down.
Take our bottom of the hour break here. Now back to this Iran situation. I have a tweet here that the president put out, and part of it I gave you just for the break about he's saying Iran's economy has worsened since President Obama's worst deal ever. But here's the interesting one too. He says Trump denounced the Iranian report as totally false on Twitter. Quote, "It's just more lies and propaganda, like their shot-down drone put out by the religious regime that is badly failing and has no idea what to do."
Yeah.
Why don't you just tell it like it is, President? Stop holding back.
Yeah.
Kind of refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, also, earlier in the week, something that I noticed is that the latest and greatest attacks at the president are concerning the Chinese, and that it's the trade with China had dropped 70%. And, as far as investing in homes and investing in businesses and whatnot here in the country, and they were fretting that this is a disaster for this country. Yet they failed to look at the economic numbers. We have record highs in the stock markets. We have record low unemployment. And if you want a job, you can really go out and get a job now. And you're looking at pay increases. So tell me exactly how this China situation is really upending the American economy, because there are no signs of that whatsoever. And, a lot of people will point to some of the farmers and some of those things that may have been hit early on with all this. It's time America starts learning how to build things and create things that the American people want, and then we need to manufacture those things or grow those things in this country. It's never a bad idea to not trade with another country if you can do it yourself, because you leave yourself open to what the other country may or may not need, or what the ulterior motive could possibly be.
And it could be something out of the ordinary, you might call that.
Mm-hmm.
I read a report last night, that guacamole, is the number one guacamole. Yes, it's the number one treat during Super Bowl and celebrations and stuff like that. So now Mexico says they're running out of guacamole, and they started making a substitute for Mexico, not for the United States.
Yeah.
So boy, I was looking at the figures, and what brought this up in my mind was I read that, and then the thing about how so many people jump on this stuff. You put a trade war on, it's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt us. It worked out pretty good when it came to Mexico with that threat, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And with regards to the avocados, that obviously is a native Californian. We're all over the guacamole. We love it. But this is kind of indicative of other countries. I mean, you remember that Rhodesia was a fully functioning country in Africa, and they, grew their own food. And once the powers that be took over the country, turned it into Zimbabwe, they are no longer exporting food. They're having to buy all of their food. So there are a lot of unintended consequences when any country, including the United States, stops producing food, stops manufacturing. Down the line, it's not good for the economy. So, I mean, if we have to rely on ourselves to take care of ourselves, and we have control of that. And in essence, in country after country, in Africa at least, these regimes come in and they completely decimate what used to be an economic system within those countries, and they no longer can feed themselves, and they can no longer pay any employees. And you have Venezuela, let's say, right now they're going through all of that. So these are consequences, and if our economy is cruising along at a pretty good clip right now, then what difference does the trade deal mean with China? Obviously, the pressure is not hurting the U.S. and it's hurting the Chinese. So we're hopeful that that they will all come to a deal. Where, President really has talked about this issue a lot. He wants to have this fairness, trade deal with China, and most indicators are that we can outlast their embargoes and things of that nature. So there most likely will be a decision on this by the end of summer at some point. But yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, do you realize that earlier this month that the mainstream media, it seemed like they were playing on it more than others, and it just kind of soaked in. And earlier this month was July 4th.
Yeah.
Fireworks. You remember how they were saying, "Hey, it ain't going to be this good next year, Mr. Trump. Your big celebration. Congratulations, because all of these things, all of these fireworks come from China." And I understand, and you're the expert. I'm telling you, there's no way the United States could ever catch up with China when it comes to making fireworks. I think we're so far behind.
Well, you know what? And those fireworks are very important. So I'm certain that that's what the farmers are thinking about out there right now. But you're right. I mean, we don't want to displace countries and take their livelihood away. That's not what we do. We work with other countries, or at least we used to.
The reason I bring it up is because you were talking about most people don't really feel any, tariffs that we're getting. A lot of people,
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of the, Trump has brought a large number of businesses back to the United States where they're starting to actually, manufacture things and not manufacture in China and or Mexico. He's done that. I mean, President Obama ran around the country and told everybody, this is the new economy, you better just deal with it. Those jobs are never coming back. Or Hillary Clinton saying, coal is gone and you guys just better get over that and retrain yourself because we are never bringing that stuff back. And in both those cases, that turned out to be untrue under the Trump administration because he's actually, has a solid record of bringing these businesses back, trying to work with Apple and trying to, lean on some of the larger corporations to actually, bring their headquarters back here so Americans can prosper and benefit from these large corporations. And right now, it's when we have Zenith or you've got Mitsubishi making cars in Mexico, it's not really helping Americans. We're not getting those jobs, and then we're not spending that money in the economy because that's going to stay in Mexico or China's economy. Workers spend their money in the country they live. So those are other issues that we need to keep in mind before you say, we got to let China walk all over us. We just need to let that go. But no, we need to stand up, and this country hasn't stood up in 20 plus years on trade deals.
Yeah, and a lot going on. And I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about Iran saying they're going to execute 17 CIA spies that they captured in a report, and I think it came from you, about Gina Haspel, who was the director of the CIA last year, that an Iranian official said that the CIA had worked with a number of countries in Europe and Asia in establishing a spy network inside Iran. And then somewhere here they talk about where they were showing videos. Let me see if I can find that real quick. It was somewhere where they were, they said that some of them were dual nationals. On the video. So that automatic, maybe one of those duels happened to be Iranian.
Yeah. We know that, we know from CIA Director Haspel, of course, that, we do conduct, secret, missions and operations overseas in a whole bunch of countries, Iran being one of them. And we also know that the Iranians that were, once Khomeini came in 1979 happened and they closed the embassy, a lot of these people that were a part of the Shah's regime had different ideas. They allowed women to actually be doctors and go to college and without having to wear the burqas and all of those types of things. So we have in this country a displaced, if you will, population of Iranian nationals that actually would like to go back to their country once there's a political revolution and the Khomeini is completely taken out of the country and they can start becoming, a more moderate government that is willing and wants to work with the West. And, by that I mean EU as well as America, Australia, any of these countries. And the majority of the people, the population in Iran, they're highly educated. A. And B, the average age is 32, 33 years old. So you have a younger generation that's looking at America and the EU and Australia and other countries saying, I want to live like that. I want to be able to listen to music. I want to be able to buy beer, things of that nature. So this, as this younger generation grows up, they're hoping that they are going to help flip the government. And that is most likely what's going on right now in Iran. And that's what they announced, that they were going to execute these 17 spies. And they said U.S. spies, but when you read the actual article, they say they don't necessarily say that they're Iranian nationals or American nationals. They just say that they're working with the Americans. So that leaves that's hugely open to interpretation. Hopefully President Trump, I'm assuming his people that are standing next to him is saying this is what's going on, and he was able to tweet out that these actually weren't CIA or U.S. people operating inside Iran. So, I mean, President usually wins out on those tweets. The majority of those tend to, go in his favor, and he doesn't tweet things he knows are wrong. So.
And I'll tell you, listener, if you're sort of new to this broadcast and hearing Kimberly, she has done extensive research on Iran. And one of the things that you just sort of touched on there is, see, once you get a little taste of freedom, because the Iranian youngsters over there, okay, the young adults even, they got a taste of some Western music, Western clothes, and all of a sudden, no, that's bad for you. And they're saying, I was feeling good, and I don't think they were even doing drugs. Who knows? Maybe they do more over there than they do here. I doubt that.
Yeah, probably not. I think that's a safe no.
Yeah, a safe no, yeah. Hey, we'll go back to the main subject here because at the date of this broadcast, we have Mueller up there being drilled and drilled and drilled like is there anything we can squeeze out. And I'll tell you that he did make one very interesting comment right here. Let me find it real quick. During Mueller's testimony in front of the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Ken Buck, he's a Republican from Colorado, he asked Mueller if he could indict the president on obstruction charges. And the former special counsel's answer was a simple yes. Aha. You see, it was a rare and striking moment in this hearing so far that's been largely, as they say in this report, enlightening. Mueller's position that he didn't consider indicting Trump solely because of the Office of Legal Counsel, OLC ruling, saying that sitting presidents can't be indicted. But here it is. But Trump won't be the president forever. So we'll indict him when he gets out in 2090.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I think for me, there are a couple things that I took away from some of the morning testimony that I watched. One that kind of really sticks out is that Mueller looked completely confused. He didn't know what he was talking about. He was talking to his attorney 40 or 50 times. He had to have the question repeated, and he looked like he was ill on TV, kind of like the Dukakis or the Nixon versus JFK, where the person just doesn't look well, and that's going to be what the American people take away from this. But what was really telling it is the fact that he was appointed by President Reagan, and he could not, when he was asked that question, he could not, he had no idea that it was Reagan. So I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know if he's just been up for 2 weeks straight and he's really not, sleeping all that well, but I'm pretty certain that if you're, put up and nominated and placed into the Justice Department by a president of the United States, you're going to remember the name of that president. So that was just the start for the Democrats and their woes today, because they, there's the afternoon session going as we speak right now. But, the morning testimony was just really uneventful. Maybe a few bites here and there for the mainstream media to use as clips, but even the mainstream media was making comments that this guy didn't even know who appointed him. And if that's the case, what's he know about the entire investigation, that the president actually did not fire and did not interfere with this investigation. And that seems to go missing when you're watching coverage of this. This president has cooperated. He could have filed Mueller. Mueller had he was conflicted on several different topics. So, this is something where, it's going to be it's a bad deal. The Dems, this is like bad for them.
Kimberly, I saw one point there when I was walking by the TV, and there was some lady questioning him, and she was talking about something that was written in the report, and she says, do you know that? And he says, yeah, I recall that, blah, 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 blah. And she said, could you read that for us? And he goes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
And she says, yeah, can you read it? And he says, oh, you want me to read it? I mean, it was like, no, I can't read it. You'll have to read it. I don't have it in front of me. So,
yeah.
Anyway, we're going to take our life-saving break right here. And Kimberly Dvorak, D-V-O-R-A-K. And it's the KD Report, streaming live at Facebook, Periscope, YouTube. And don't go away. We'll be, I guess the overall feeling that people are getting from what happened today in this so-called hearing was that Mueller was frustrated and just kept asking, repeat the questions and tense. And so now they'll probably say, well, we got to copy him a room, the night before, we got to do it all over again. They're not satisfied no matter what. No,
they're not. This actually, I think it was Matt Gaetz, Congressman Gaetz, who was asked by a media outlet how the president or he were thinking that the hearings were going. And all he did is text back to the media outlet. I think it was Daily Beast. But they sent back a picture of a giant mushroom cloud, because that's exactly what this looked like today. And, when you see, Mueller, he was dazed and confused. I mean, like I said, nobody knew that this is how the hearing would turn out, with him not being up to par on this. I just want to go back to also the conflicted issues that Mueller had going into this and accepting this special counsel position. He was Comey's best buddy at the FBI, so he was expected to be, impartial when it comes to Comey. That's one confliction. Trump turned him down for a job within his administration weeks earlier. That's a conflict. He actually, had so many allies with the left, and he didn't really have any, conservative, I guess, folks from DOJ come over and work for him. In fact, we saw the complete opposite of that. So, on those grounds, Jeff Sessions recused himself from the investigation, and you see people all the time recusing themselves, even on the Supreme Court, when something like this comes up. So, the fact that the president allowed this to continue to its end, and by the end, the report being written, and probably the exclamation point will be today, that showed, a lot about the president. He did not exert at any point here. He didn't use executive privilege. He just didn't do it. Where Mueller used the, what's the term of it here? He used the deliberative, privilege on this, which means he spoke to all these different individuals. They took notes, and then they said, okay, we're done with this, and basically got rid of all of the notes and didn't use them to write the report. Well, the president didn't do that here, but Mueller used that as a way to get around answering questions he did not want to answer, or that he didn't even know the answer to, more sadly.
I wonder if anyone brought up the way General Flynn was treated. Like, no, you don't need an FBI. You don't need a lawyer. They just want to ask you a few questions, and then he lied, and the people that filed the report said, no, he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
Boy.
And it's
it's a shame.
Yeah.
It was the United States of America had to go through this.
It is, because in the end, this is supposed to be the big bombshell that drops, and now they're going to go through impeachment proceedings. That is going to be completely dead. And probably the biggest winner today, Nancy Pelosi. She's probably the biggest winner here, because she's got this squad of gals over here that are just barking up the tree to get rid of President Trump by any means. They have no idea what what legal laws actually are, but, they're out there in front of the cameras every day. And Nancy has just not known what to do with them. And
right.
In fact, when she,
Yeah. Running out of time. And on that note, maybe Nancy can get Omar to consult with one of her many husbands and determine what she should do.
There you go. The big winner, Nancy Pelosi.
There you go. You hit it right there. Kimberly Dvorak, D-V-O-R-A-K. You'll find her on Facebook, TheAmericanConservative.com, the KD Report, and, of course, occasionally CW6 News San Diego, One American News Network. Look forward to our next visit. All right.